It's the Underpowered Hour. On this week's show, we give you part 2 of our incredible interview with Duncan Barbour. Then we talk a little bit about electrified defenders and upcoming Land Rover events. And now, here's the show. Welcome to the Underpowered Hour. I'm Steve Barris, mild-mannered television executive by day and Land Rover collector by night. You can find out more about our cars and what we're working on at thebarriscollection.com or follow us on Instagram at thebarriscollection. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Ike Goss.
Thank you to everyone joining us today. I'm the machined lug nut to Steven's chrome decorative cap. I'm the removable wheel of podcasting, Ike Goss. I own and operate Pangolin 4x4 in Springfield, Oregon, where we live and breathe Land Rovers. Check us out online on Facebook, Instagram at Pangolin 4x4. Let's get started.
All right, Ike. Well, you sound exceptional today. Tell us
I'm always exceptional.
What have you been up to in your extracurricular activities here this weekend as we come into the spooky season?
I've been screaming at children in a haunted house.
Right. And is this sanctioned haunted house, or this is just trying to get kids to stay off your lawn?
I wish it were the latter, but it is the former. It is a fundraiser for the local history museum. Apparently, scaring children promotes history. So there we go.
Scaring up history.
Scaring up history.
Interest, yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah, and it's you and Linus and Maddie and Jenna all in there yelling at kids.
Yeah, there were several that cried yesterday. It just warmed my heart.
Yeah, that's great. That's the goal, hey, is to traumatize.
You know, there's actually like a less scary, like little kids time.
I see. Yeah.
It's like a few hours. And then there's like an older kids time, which is more scary. And apparently parents like to bring their young children to the more scary time and they get really scared.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, but it all benefits the museum. So
that's
it's a win.
What matters. It's a win. It's a win. And what is it that you do to scare them? Just to go through old parts bins?
Yeah.
And like, look at these rusty bats.
I just show them pictures from work and they just cry.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, here's a stud broken off in block of this motor. Oh, will we ever get it out?
Previous owner repair. Woo!
All these wires are the same color. Yeah, that's great. Well, speaking of previous owners, we had just gone through the sort of press week of Land Rover's famous Trek competition. This year, done entirely in the Defender 130, which happens to be the same spec as Liza and Jenna used on the Rebelle, slightly modified, obviously, for the Rebelle, but essentially it is a 130, very capable, very roomy SUV that they're running the Trek in now. This is the 4th year, I think. Is that right? That they've been back?
Yes, 4th year since they've returned from a 17-year hiatus, I'm told.
We're going to do that with this show, I think. We're going to take a 17-year hiatus.
Can't wait.
We'll be right back.
I, along with many others, cannot wait.
Cannot wait. Yeah, the entire audience is just counting the days until that happens. Well, we found an article from Motor Biscuit. What flavor do you think a Motor Biscuit is? Like
oil.
Yeah, it's just oil
flavored. It's greasier than normal biscuit, which is saying a lot.
So good. Anyways, interesting. Sounds like fun. They had to do some blindfolded driving. They had to run a casualty evacuation drill. All kinds of fun skills, I guess.
So what did the summary say? It said that one of the team members was the casualty. So they're just dead weight and the others have to evacuate that person.
That's right. And you were telling me that, I guess I always thought a casualty means the person had to be dead, but they could just be gravely injured, I guess.
I always, thought evacuation was in a different context.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to evacuate one of your team members, which is
sketchy.
It's a little off color. Yeah. Anyways, we'll put that article in the show notes. You can go check that out. And I'm sure there's going to be lots more stories coming out from Trek here in the coming weeks as it's in full swing. They've just gone through it. Had dinner with our very good friend Jeffrey Ahuden there in New York last week, and he was talking all about it. Said it was a great time. Sounds like a ton of fun out there in Texas.
Well, we'll be there very soon.
We will be. We will be. So speaking of Texas, we're going to be there next week for Trophy. Look forward to a live from the Trophy, a recap that Ike and I will do before we fly back here to Los Angeles and Oregon, respectively. And that should be super fun. We're going to bring all the cameras. We're going to make some videos. We're going to definitely make asses of ourselves. That's the only mode we have. So it should be good. You're still going to scare kids, I think. Still
We're going to be driving 130s, and it's going to be a fish out of water scenario. I have never piloted a 130. So
Right.
See how that goes.
Yeah,
well,
I've driven
a new 130.
A new 130, yeah, I was going to say. I've driven the Eclipse a little bit, but no, certainly I haven't done any serious off-roading in a 130 at all. And that car is about 70 years newer than the car I drove to the studio today. So should be fun. So look forward to that. That'll be next
Perhaps
week.
I will finally learn how to drive an automatic transmission.
Yeah, blindfolded backwards, and then we're going to have to evacuate each other. It'll be great. I can't wait.
You're going to be looking over there, and we're going to be sawzalling the roof off. It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be great.
What are those guys doing?
What are those assholes doing? Yeah, that'll be the first and last time we're ever invited to a Land Rover event such as this. But you know what? Hey, that's fine. It's gonna be great. And then of course the week after that is none other than Destination Defender.
Final Destination Defender.
Destination Defender. It's some kind of Rube Goldberg machine for murdering you and your Defender.
Yeah,
great. Yeah, I can't wait. So that's going to be super fun. There's bands. The Fits and the Tantrums will be there.
I hear those guys are great.
Yeah, super fun. I wonder if Liza will do a duet. Do we want to do an over-under on if Liza is going to do a duet with the Fits and the Tantrums this year?
2 years in a row? Seems unlikely.
You never know. You never know. Yeah, both Ike and I will also be having Fits and Tantrums while we're there. So it'll be great. It's going to be fun. I don't know what kind of shenanigans we'll get up to, but if you haven't got your tickets, grab them. They're still available online. If you're part of a Land Rover club, reach out to the folks that run your Land Rover club, as they very well may have a discount code for you. And last I heard, that discount might be 100%.
Pretty cool. They're reaching out to the local club community.
Yeah,
so
it's super cool. There's going to be some neat cars there and
food. There's going to be food.
Delicious. The food last year was great. Coffee was great. I would steer clear of the hot chocolate by day 3. It doesn't. I think they just keep adding water to it, and so it becomes like a sludge by that last day that is eaten with a spoon. So it's
that's the best kind.
That's the best kind. Yeah. Speaking of eaten with a spoon and interesting cars, so our good friends in Guernsey, which little known fact, they have their own version of the pound. The Guernsey pound. So
did not know that.
I think you can spend it anywhere, but it's weird. People don't. It's like a Northern Irish pound. People don't like it. They look at it. They question it. It doesn't make them comfortable. Anyways, with those Guernsey pounds, it sounds like the Armed Response Service, the police, the Adventure Squad.
This is not just any emergency response department.
Mm-hmm.
Guernsey is the second largest island in the Channel Islands. Mm-hmm. So this is a big deal.
That's a big deal. Yeah, there's lots of people on that island. They have an emergency response team, and that team has a very special Land Rover Defender.
It's armored.
Ooh, why do they need an armored one?
In case.
Okay.
In case there's some projectiles of some variety.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There's some unrest.
And how often do they use this armored Defender?
Apparently, since 2012, when it was purchased for $250,000.
10 years ago, give or take, yeah.
Yeah, they've used it 0 times.
Oh, 0 times.
0 times. Now, I don't know what, precipitated the purchase of this. Perhaps once they purchased it, those people that were responsible for unrest were like, whoa, we can't, they've got this Defender. So perhaps it was prophylactic in that way.
Right. It's a nuclear deterrent sort of a situation going on there that there are people that would, cause chaos on Guernsey, but there's an armored Defender. So as long as that's around.
So it's been used 0 times. So look for that to be available at a disposal auction in the near future.
In the very near future for pennies on the Guernsey pound. Yeah, well, that'll be fun. And speaking of pennies on the Guernsey pound, so as you know, Ike, the United Kingdom has worked out a great scheme to create a battery factory.
Gigafactory.
The Gigafactory in the UK, right there in the UK on the English mainland. And I would assume it would garner favor from the folks at JLR to then build the all-electric Defender there in the UK.
Yeah, I believe several months ago, Tata sort of had a ultimatum for the British government. They were like, we're going to move battery production to Spain or to Eastern Europe unless you help us invest in this gigafactory for batteries for our vehicles. So I think recently, what happened?
Well, they decided they're going to build the electric Defender in Slovakia. So you're welcome, the UK. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, at least they'll have batteries.
They'll have batteries, and I guess they're going to make panels at Castle Bromchurch, which is kind of interesting. They're still, and they're going to make drive units still in the UK, but then they're shipping all that stuff to Slovakia for Vlado and company to assemble there in the Slovakian Defender factory. So.
Vlado is coming to visit.
Oh my God!
I don't know if you knew that, but he is coming to visit. He is working on very soon a 107 wagon. For those of you that don't know, this is a Land Roverista. And Hayos Motors on the Instagram.
Yep, our very good friend Vlado.
Yeah.
Awesome guy.
Yeah, super nice guy from Slovakia. Has a Land Rover restoration shop there. Anyway, he's coming to visit the old Pangolin 4x4 shop here towards the end of November. So we'll have to do a special show with Vlado. He's checking out, though, because he's got an upcoming restoration for that, and he doesn't have access to any there.
I can't imagine there's a lot of 107 wagons in Slovakia. There's not a lot anywhere. So
I think it's pretty unusual. So anyway, he's coming to visit. I'm looking forward to seeing him, and we'll do some off-roading and driving around of Land Rovers. He's going to be here for a few days. So that's going to be great.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. That'll be fantastic. Well, speaking of awesome people that we have had an opportunity to talk to in the not so distant past, our very good friend, Duncan Barbour. He and I sat down in the back of the Vampyre Bat, the world's greatest off-road tracking camera vehicle. And we were so engulfed in what was a spectacular conversation that we just ran too long to possibly put into one podcast. We split that into two parts.
It's a lot to talk about. Two very accomplished filmmakers.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. At least one. And that one just happens to have worked on everything from Braveheart. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Freedom.
Golden Eye, the 007 film, in my opinion, one of the best ones.
Best video game adaptation.
Oh, for sure it is. Yeah, without question. And, of course, Game of Thrones, our very own Game of Thrones. So Duncan and I talked about working together on Game of Thrones. We talked about his very first bat, the Defender 90, that is all souped up and race ready, and how they use that really to kind of pioneer this camera stabilization stuff that he does now on, like I said, in GoldenEye, when the tank comes through the wall and is barreling down the street, Duncan is parked in front of it and racing away from it as not to get hit by giant tank. So yeah, super cool scene. Yeah. It's a cool scene, and Duncan's just the best. He's such a great friend of the show and such a knowledgeable and experienced. He's seen it all,
Been there, done that.
He sure has. So without further ado, here's part 2 of the Duncan Barbour interview. And
do we have something very special in store? We are here in no other place than the actual Batcave with no one better than the real Duncan Barbour, the actual Batman. Here on the Vampyre Bat, the greatest off-road camera tracking car of all time. And you're going to hear all about it. The most amazing conversation with a true Land Rover legend, Camel Trophy, Game of Thrones, Braveheart. He's done it all. And for whatever reason, he's allowed us into the inner sanctum here to have a chat. So nowadays, like you said, there's obviously no more Camel Trophy. Now, instead, four-wheel drive vehicles for the pursuit of feature filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
So what brought you to do that work?
So I'd just come back from a Camel Trophy event, from holiday actually, back to Camel, to find out that my job had been made redundant. The day that happened, Nick Phillips, who's the designer and builder of the Libra stabilized head, he'd actually, Nick and Harvey Harrison, who were the kind of co-owners at that time, had been on Camel Trophy with us, filming it on 16 millimeter for advertising purposes for cinemas and stuff.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Yeah, so they were working.
I didn't realize that they were there. That's very cool.
And one of the big things about McCann Erickson wanting to use Harvey Harrison and Nick on this was because of Libra, a stabilized head, because obviously Harvey had Harvey had sold it to them saying, listen, we can get some amazing shots out the back of the Land Rovers, of other Land Rovers driving in the jungle that will be really usable.
Right.
Because we've got the stabilized technology.
Yeah, the Libre,
And I mean, up until that point, the only other stabilized head was probably the big gyro ones used on helicopters.
That's right. Yeah, I'm trying to think
what's the name?
The early hotheads. But anyways, certainly the Libre is like is a demarcation point in camera stabilization. Like it's
absolutely
sort of started a whole new trend in how that stuff was done. Yeah. So yeah, that's very cool.
So Harvey said, we can get these great shots.
Yeah.
And it was also, I guess, a bit of a development platform for them as well, because where else do you get those kind of conditions to work in? So I used to do some driving for them when we did some of the testing beforehand.
Right.
And I got to know the crew really well. Nick phoned me up saying, "G'day, Dunk, how are you getting on?" Blah, blah. He said, I've just heard from John Toll that he wants me to do the Battle of Stirling sequence on Braveheart.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm going to build a crane and we're going to use Libra. And he said, what would you recommend as a vehicle to mount it on?
Yeah.
So I got a few more details off him. We were chatting away. And ultimately I said, what you need is a Land Rover because it's a solid chassis.
Yeah.
We can mount stuff at the front, rear, on the sides, whatever. And he said, oh no, but a Land Rover is too slow. And I said, as it happens, I've got quite a quick Land Rover. So at that point, he went away and thought about it and then came back to me. And by that time, I'd been made redundant. I was due to go off to celebrate the D-Day landings in an old 6-wheel drive duck that we were sailing across the channel with a stuntman called Jim Dowdle, who had actually been driving for Nick and Harvey on Guyana event. So I was heading off with them, and Nick was about to do some tests for Braveheart. And I said, listen, if you want, you can borrow my Land Rover, stick Libra in the back of it, however you need to, and do the tests. So he went off, did the tests. I went across the channel in a duck twice. Very slow journey, I can see.
Yeah.
And when I came back, Nick said, he said it was fantastic. He said, the vehicle's quick enough because one of the parts of the brief was it had to be able to out-accelerate a stallion from standing start to full gallop.
Right.
And
which your average diesel Land Rover is not great at. Yeah.
No, I definitely wouldn't do that. And also getting the grip.
Yeah.
Because this had been equipped with Quaife diffs front and rear, so I had, torque biasing.
Traction axles,
Plenty of traction there. And so he came back and said, it's quick enough, that's great, they like that. He said, but what about the suspension? And I said, well, listen, Nick, if you can get me a job on doing this, by the time I chat to Harvey, he said, nobody's doing off-road camera tracking, nobody at all.
Yeah, that's right.
He said it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's not a thing.
It's not a thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a thing now. Everybody's doing it.
But nobody's doing it as well.
Nobody's doing it as well.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So I said, I'll build you the vehicle if you can get me onto the film. And he said, great. He said, take that as read. He said, because whatever happens, I need a vehicle to mount the crane on. I spoke to Paul Ridgway, told him what we needed to do, and we sorted suspension out for the vehicle. We sorted a roll cage inside it, roll cage outside it, a big framework to mount the crane to, which is basically, the crane was really almost like a dolly track mounted, a 12-foot dolly track mounted vertically with a hydraulic capstan winch in it.
Wow.
And a frame to move the camera up and down on.
Yeah.
In fact, I've got just at the back of the workshop, there's a black, on top of that shelf there's a black bit of tubing and a flat paddle on it. That's what the camera used to hang on. I've still got the old crane in one of my trailers out the back there.
Wow.
And that's what we used on Braveheart. And we were able to mount the crane on each side of the vehicle, and then on the opposite side went a hydraulics pack, which had batteries in it and hydraulic accumulator, and that's how we did it.
Wow.
And it's funny, because gradually they went away from that kind of crane.
Yeah.
Everything was Russian arm and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And then 2 years ago, I was on a job, and suddenly out comes a big tube, and it's a vertical mast doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it is. It's pivoted back, and things like the black arm and stuff,
yes,
I think,
exactly.
have really pivoted back to being side mounted on a car
Yeah.
or rear mounted on a car. And I think it just, the versatility of that, when you know the shot that you're going to get, and you don't need, something like the pursuit systems guys in LA, where, if you're doing car commercials, the Russian arm or the Ukraine, that makes a ton of sense. But if you're shooting a movie, we don't, it's
need all
not
of
a
that.
theme. Yeah. And so you end up, you're actually more limited, because of everything that goes into that. And the camera has to be set up so specifically, and your lens, you've got the weight issues and things. And so it's funny how much it's actually, you're right, it's moved back to more of a traditional, cage mounted black arm kind of.
Which is nice to see.
Yeah,
I mean, for a long time I've been going, everybody just seems to want the latest, highest technology stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, can't you keep it simple?
Yeah.
But they're still actually wanting to keep it super complicated.
Yeah.
I can't remember how many jobs I've lost out because they've gone, no, we want a Russian arm.
Right.
Sorry, Ukraine. Arm.
Ukraine. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But it is. It's true. It's one of those things. And you know what? The amount that those things can do and how complex they are actually in some ways works against you, because the repeatability, everything that operator has to do, to the arm itself, forget about operating the camera, the control of those arms, it's so complicated, and repeatability becomes a real issue.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a more traditional system, then your operator's focusing on operating, they're framing the shot, and it's just a different thing. And I think, to come around to it, that's a big reason that for Game of Thrones, we decided that we needed something that was able to keep pace with what we need, but more importantly, wouldn't sink into the bog, which was as where we shot St. Field, in Northern Ireland, we had more landing mat than the British Army, I think, at one point, to make sure that our cars in the parking lot didn't sink into the bog. Because the first few years, we certainly had enough rental cars, stuck up to their axles in Irish bog, and had the boys. And thankfully, again, Land Rover is a big supporter of the show, and we had, our whole fleet of white 110s. And they were meant just to ferry talent back and forth to the sets, but ended up being almost a full-time recovery crew, because they were pulling all the crew out. So, going into it, knowing that we need a car, that can keep pace with these horses, and that can support the, what is a Technocrane essentially on the back of it. And that isn't going to get bogged immediately, and there's no other car out there, that will do that. You couldn't bring the Pursuit Systems F-150 or something, for instance, because it just isn't meant for that. It's not, it's a heavy car, but it's meant for the desert and things like that, where it's not going to get bogged. And also, fly that from the United States. Like, how do you even get it? And there's nothing in Europe that does that. And so what sort of inspired you to build the evolution from, start with Braveheart, which what is essentially that one 90, a sort of stock Land Rover, more or less, obviously heavily modified, but it looks like a Land Rover, to this, which is a completely unique vehicle, sort of purpose built for this kind of thing.
Well, I mean, this was built really around what I learned off using the old 90, was based around what I was hearing from grips and people like that. So I mean, if you're looking at all these bits and pieces, I said the grips were saying, we could do with power close to the camera position, wherever it is on the vehicle.
Right.
So I put power up to here, power at the back here, it's power at the front. So wherever you went in this vehicle, they only had to do a short run to plug into something.
Right.
Then the video guys were saying, it'd be really handy just to not to have loads of cable about the floor. So, can you put in access to video feeds and stuff like that? So hence why we all that's there. There's outlets in the cab as well. Ironically, when I did all that, nobody used any of it. They just went to one position.
Right.
So there was a lot of work in different bits that was never used. I knew we needed room on the back. I knew I needed to get seats that would mount wherever they needed them.
Yeah.
The old cage system on the first Batmobile worked really well, so I duplicated it on this. So this is This has actually got a cage that goes all the way back. So
and
we're
this is a custom made. This is a safety devices derived.
no, this was made by Protection and Performance.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it was designed specifically for the vehicle because I gave them a spec. I said, it needs to be able to carry a ton on the roof potentially.
Yeah.
I said, we could be using bits of the cage in different places. So, for instance, I can put on the back here, but just have two. Or in fact, in Game of Thrones, we brought the cage back to here.
Yeah.
And then the big aluminium plate that sits at the front, that kind of sat halfway over the three operators who were sitting here.
So
camera operator in the middle, camera operator there, focus puller, and then head and arm
operator,
tech. And then the arm operator went in the cab. So this was a busy area. And then sometimes I have to put another seat up here for the photographer to be on the vehicle to get some stuff. And at one point we even had a Libra mounted on the back and the front to get other shots. So you couldn't have done that with any of the other vehicles that are around at the moment.
No, a Porsche Cayenne you can't mount anything to the front of the back of it. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, the F-150 is an okay choice, but the rest of them have always been high performance cars because they're meant to shoot car commercials. Like that's really what the Russian arm is for. It's a car commercial piece. This is just this feels like, I'm from Canada, and William F. White is our, is in Canada. And William F. White had the pickup trucks with the full speed rail cage around them. And that was it. And you'd mount the arm and you'd mount the camera. And it was just sort of, so this is reminiscent of that in a way that this isn't a pickup truck from the 1990s.
No.
But, this is sort of the evolution of that in a way that is, again, there's nothing in the world like it. I mean, you know that obviously. So talk a little bit about sort of being there, operating the car. Well, so this car obviously is the actual car, the Vampyre Bat that we used on Game of Thrones for the Bastards Battle of Winterfell, is what more traditionally known as. And so talk to me a little bit about what is that process like for you? So this, I guess it gets on a barge and heads to Northern Ireland.
Well, it goes in my truck.
No, it goes in your truck. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah.
Squeeze it in, inch of clearance on each side.
Yeah.
It goes in the truck along with all the rest of the kit I need. By that time, I'd already been down to Bicker's Action because they didn't have a vehicle that would cope with the off-road conditions, which is why they asked me to come in with this. And I'd previously used it on Fury with a Ukraine arm on top for Bicker's. So when they were asked to, actually at that point we weren't even sure we were going to do it because there was two tracking vehicles went out. It was Chapman's had taken one of their big trucks out with a normal crane on it. Yeah. And I can't remember if that was the one with the tracks on it or...
we had a tracked one for a little bit, but that had the speed was just not there. Couldn't go. And then the other one just sank into the mud immediately. Yeah. That was it. It was,
we went
and I think it took no less than 3 110s to pull that thing out, finally get it back onto solid enough ground that it could go. But no, and again, Chapman is a wonderful company. They have great stuff, right? But again, it's just the conditions there, Northern Ireland, Saintfield, which is, sort of north of Bainbridge, and it is a marsh. I mean, it's nobody should go there, certainly not to make a movie.
No, especially after you killed all the grass that was holding all that surface mud together.
Yeah. No, we worked very hard to kill that grass, spread straw over it and let it sit. And absolutely.
So yes, went out to do that. So we had the test and actually, at the time of the test, conditions weren't that bad. Not like when we filmed, where they were really, really bad.
We'd had horses parading over it for the better part of 2 weeks. So,
yes. So conditions were bad when we went back to do the filming.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like any other film, it's a real juggling act, and you're working to try and get a lot of things in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
For me as a driver, especially when you're working with that kind of remotely controlled arm, you've got to be coordinating with your arm operator in the front.
Yeah.
You've also got what the the cameraman wants and the
Yeah.
and the DOP and the director with regards to the position of the camera and the subject they're filming.
Yeah.
And you add that to the fact that you're filming a horse sometimes with a stunt rider on it, where it's a bit more controllable because they can work to you as you can work to them.
Yeah.
When it's an actor on it, it's slightly different.
Right.
And then throw in the ground conditions where almost zero grip, really.
Yeah.
Because, it was just smooth mud. And as soon as the wheels get choked up, you're running on slicks.
Yeah.
So, particularly in that Bat of the Bastards one where we're heading towards the other side of the hill and we've got a downhill and then an uphill, that was quite difficult getting the traction initially to get off and then trying to get enough speed up and enough throttle down to throw the mud out the tires because, if you don't do that, you are driving on slicks.
Yep.
And in the meantime, controlling the vehicle from fishtailing because gravity, as soon as it was catching on that slippery slope, gravity's trying to take the back end of the car away.
Yeah.
And then keeping it in a straight line with regards to your subject that you're filming as well.
Yeah.
So there was quite a lot going on when we did it.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, camera operator was absolutely fantastic and understood the conditions that we were driving in and that, and the fact we're dealing with an animal as well. So things can't be perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot of fun though as well, just, to be driving those conditions and trying to get that job as good as you can. But the vehicle was fishtailing around.
There is some amazing footage, some great photos of spray of mud coming off. And, it was, it was funny, those 2 weeks leading up to that. The grips would start with, regular boots, and then they'd have their wellies on. And by the end of it, they were all wearing waders because guys were
so
falling
muddy.
over so much. They were getting so covered in mud. They were all wearing full hip waders. And
well, I remember when I was
brutal.
there was suddenly a big panic off set, and one of the big cherry pickers on tracks had started sliding down the hill.
Yeah.
So
it started coming down the hill. Yeah.
It should never have been parked on the side of a hill.
I don't know why. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We had a cable camera that we had run between those two cherry pickers.
Yeah.
That we had all the overhead shots because it couldn't fly drones there because of the rain and everything and the wind was too much. So we'd fly this the cable cam back and forth. And at one point, the cable got tensioned a bit too much. And they started pulling them both together.
Yeah.
It's just because there's nothing on the ground.
It was a very low traction environment.
No traction at all. Yeah, no, it was incredible. And again, I think you look at the results of that episode. I think in many people's opinions, certainly one of the greatest episodes of Game of Thrones that we did. In our just shy of 80 episodes. That is regarded as one of the best medieval battle scenes.
Yep.
Probably ever put to film, and then or digital bits and bytes, and probably one of the most sort of gut-wrenching, captivating ways of shooting it because it felt real in a way that wasn't like, oh, this is amazing. It felt real in a way that was sort of downtrodden and depressing and sort of, compressive in a way that when, for those who haven't seen it, spoiler alert, I guess, when the battle sort of makes a turn and you realize Kit's not dead and he's come back and all of this sort of stuff, then you sort of, it's such an uplift.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, everything before that had to just be misery. And it was that way to make it too. It
was definitely. I mean, I think, it's definitely one of the great scenes in filmmaking history. It is epic, and I think it sits alongside Ben-Hur. And some of those films with regards to what was like Braveheart, that big Battle of Stirling sequence. So, we've got 3 vehicles here that have been involved in
some of the most, Well, so let's talk a little bit about the filmography. So there's Braveheart. That's sort of what got it started. And, maybe Game of Thrones is certainly one of the most noteworthy. But what are some of the other shows that this collection of vehicles have worked on?
James Bond Goldeneye. Which was, that was another pretty, that was an amazing one for me because we worked in the south of France, down at Leavesden. And in fact, that one was sitting in front of the tank that came through the wall.
Right,
That stunt there, which went seemed to go on and on and on because it was all day to shoot it.
Yeah.
I think about 10 run-ups to the wall, which each one was cancelled because the timing wasn't quite right. It was pretty critical when it was coming off a 10-foot ramp.
That's right.
40 tons of tank coming towards you.
Through the wall, right, yeah.
So I was sitting in front of that one. That will always stick in my mind, that particular shot, especially as the wall burst open. It was almost like slow motion from with the barrel coming through and then the tank bursting. So James Bond GoldenEye, this one was on Wrath of the Titans.
Right, yeah.
This one did a sequence in that. Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, yeah, right.
With Johnny Depp.
Yeah, that's right.
That was a whole load of stuff inside a studio. Again, the big problem for other tracking vehicles was they couldn't keep up with the horses. These have always been really good on that sort of thing because of the traction they're getting from the vehicles and the power and torque.
Right.
Especially when you're carrying a big load.
And people take that for granted, how quickly a horse can go from a standstill to like a full gallop.
Oh, it's quick.
Staggeringly quick. You think, I guess, you think, oh, well, it's a car. That's 1 horsepower. This has 125, you know, but it's that a horse can get going. It doesn't weigh anything for how much power it has. And it's startling how quick a horse
they're very, very quick.
Yeah.
The only thing quicker off the mark is greyhounds.
I've
done tracking shots on greyhounds.
Oh, interesting.
They're pretty quick.
Yeah.
I did a really incredible shoot with birds of prey. So, actually, not just birds of prey. I did one with a raven, where we're moving along, and the raven was coming to a lure that was being held by the handler, because they were shooting on high-speed cameras. They were trying to get a raven doing some kind of loop that they do. They fly and they stall and almost twist on themselves. And I had a platform, basically a piece of this, a platform sitting outside the vehicle on the left-hand side with one of these seats mounted on the platform. So as the handler was completely out with the vehicle and the kind of turbulence from it. And he brought along a peregrine falcon, a raven. We never got the starlings out for that one. We were supposed to be doing tracking shots on starlings.
Wow.
So we're doing tracking shots on a peregrine, and what they were trying to do was catch the peregrine in its stoop before it dived down, which they managed to do. And I'd have to shoot off. I kind of shot off to about 50 miles an hour, and then they'd let the peregrine go. It would fly towards the guy, up into the air, and then down into the stoop and take the lure. But the really incredible one was the raven. He came, did his stall, grabbed the lure, and then we're still moving along, and he lands on the tracking vehicle next to his handler. And that kind of blew my mind. I thought, hold on, birds don't normally land on moving objects.
Unmoving objects, wow.
A, they're very, very clever, ravens.
Very clever.
And B, I remember Lloyd saying to me, he said, he thinks I'm his mate, and all he does is mug me all the time for food. And that was it. That's.
I know that.
How did he do that?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because we did some Raven stuff on Game of Thrones and getting them to fly in straight lines. Like they'll solve math problems if you want them to. You know, like they're really incredible. Like incredible things. Well, Duncan, this has been. We could talk all day. I mean, I think for probably a month we have a multi-part series here. But
you're most welcome back anytime.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for having us here. In the Bat Cave, and thank you first of all for everything you've done for the Land Rover community, and then thank you for making one of, I think, the greatest shots in certainly television history, maybe in all of cinema possible for us. Being a part of that team, absolutely amazing. So please. Now you have to come over to, Oregon in between a Overland Expo or something, spend some time with Ike and I and drive around some
I'd like to
75-year-old shitty Land Rovers. And
that would suit me fine.
Good.
Look at some of the old stuff in here.
Brilliant. All right. Well, hey, thank you again.
You're most welcome, Steve. Thank you.
All right. Cheers for now.
Cheers.
I love Duncan Barbour so much. He is so interesting to talk to. Holy moly. It is really incredible.
When I was a kid reading articles about him, in the Camel Trophy, I actually thought he was the barber for the Camel Trophy. I was like 10, so I could be forgiven for that. But
no, it makes sense. I mean, he may. I don't know. Moonlight.
I thought he was just giving it on the Camel Trophy.
Yeah. Well, they did have. I think it was Bill Burke that was telling me they had a guy that only dealt with the watches. Like there was one guy on the Camel Trophy, and he just made sure that everybody's Camel Trophy watches, like anything they needed, he was there to deal with the watches.
Yeah, I believe that there's like a whole separate entity that was like Camel watches and maybe boots too. They did all the merchandising for that. So that makes sense. If there's a lot of photography going on, there's somebody making sure that all that is, the watch faces are clean. He just comes out with a little cloth. And
yeah, they're cool. I have one of them. They're a real, a niche, but they're a real collectible. People seek them out. And more importantly, they seek out the store display stand, which was like a crazy little mountain that had a backdrop with a Defender 110 and some other stuff on it. It was very cool.
Those people are dorks.
Yes, super dorks. Super dork. Camel Trophy collector dorks are the dorkiest of dorks. So, of which I'm glad to announce that myself and a couple of other North American Camel Trophy collectors have signed up to represent the Camel Trophy Club here in North America. So we're going to get together and we're going to try to put on a Camel Trophy event, gathering of Camel Trophy owners here in North America at some point in the next couple of years. So,
well, we couldn't be prouder of you dorks for representing the rest of us.
Mega dorks. Speaking of dorks, if you want to totally dork out on Duncan's workshop, holy moly, do we have a video for you up on the YouTube site, part of our 4-part Travel Across the UK series. You can get an up-close and personal walkthrough of all of Duncan's vehicles. He's got a 6-wheel drive ATV, which is super cool. I keep calling it a 6-wheel drive quad, which I realize is not the appropriate term. And he's got, of course, the original Vampyre Bat, or the original Bat, the Vampyre Bat, and then also like a side-by-side specifically for camera car stuff. So it's super cool. We've also got a replacing the exhaust on the now for sale Series 3. So you can check out that brand new exhaust on the Series 3 that you're about to purchase. It's very nice. Great. Yeah, it's up there with Ike. How was the trip back north with the Series 3?
Harrowing.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, that and the raiders and the desolate wasteland of Northern California.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You got to look out. It's Gavin Nunes territory. Steer clear. Steer clear. Remember that guy?
What?
Yeah. Remember that guy? Yeah, that's great. He's got one of those masks like the guy from Mad Max, the Fury Road. He's just riding around out there.
Yeah, but we made it, and your car is safely here, and it will be available for purchase.
Yeah,
as soon as it has some accoutrements.
It's going through a full Ike grade upkeep and recommissioning, and it's going to be great.
No, it's not doing any of that.
A bolt for bolt restoration. That's going to be great. No, it's a great car. It's a good driver. It's not a particularly original car, but it is a car that you can drive every single day. You can live with it.
Exceptional West Coast chassis and bulkhead. Really good.
It's in really good shape. Best steering of any Series 3. I'll stand by that. And it just runs and works, and it's just a great car. Lots of spare parts. Yeah, it's good. Anyways, if you want to check that out and other Land Rover videos, check out our YouTube channel. We're getting there. We're really trying to breach that magic 500 subscriber number. So, hey, you know what? Even if you don't watch them, if you could just go and subscribe for us, that'd be hugely helpful. Just go to the old YouTube and search Underpowered Hour.
Smash that like button.
Smash it. Turn on like and subscribes and bells and all the other shit that you have to turn on. Do all that shit. That's great. And if you like Land Rover content, let me tell you, head on over to the Patreon because we are going to do special content, after dark content from the old Destination Defender as well as Trophy. So we'll have special stuff up there, little interviews, and
perhaps some upcoming special content from the Nick Dimbleby, Michael Bishop, Ike Goss reunion.
Oh my God.
Coming up in November.
It's going to be so good. I can't wait.
It's going to be good.
It's just going to be a love fest. I can't wait. There will be tears. There will be everything. It's going to be huge. So we'll catch up with you next week live from the Defender Trophy as Ike and I drive a brand new Defender 130 into a ravine or something. It's going to be great.
See you soon.
The Underpowered Hour is produced by Liza Barris, Ike Goss, and me, Steve Barris. Pavel Svardov composed and performed our theme music. Consider supporting the show on Patreon, and if you already do, thank you. Your support makes the show possible. For even more, check out our Instagram or Facebook.